I always hear all great things about the donut bar here in San Diego.
Right.
I love it. I see it right across the street from our old headquarters in downtown.
Sure.
And everybody that comes to San Diego is like, I got to go to the donut bar. How'd you come up with this idea?
Well, it took many, many years to think of an idea that I would really want to bring to the masses, right? So I worked for years in five-star hotels, pastry chef, did all kinds of things throughout the hotels, and knew that one day I wanted to start my own bakery, but I never knew it would be actually donuts, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, who really dives into something like that? I mean, let's take it a step further back to where this all began. I hear some rumors about Border Patrol service, your passion.
Right,
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2012, I decided I was going to switch careers. So I'll give you the quick rundown, right? So back in 1997, I started racing motorcycles all the way up until 2003, and I won a couple of road racing championships, kept on racing all the way through 2009, and I finally hung up my road racing leathers in 2009 and said, I used to race motorcycles. I was really good at it, right? And won a couple championships, which I'm still proud of even today.
Yeah.
10 years later, wow, time flies.
Dodge bullets,
right,
adrenaline
right.
junkie.
But I had that adrenaline, just like you said, and I said, what do I want to do next with my life? And I thought maybe it was time to serve a bit, so I thought I was going to go into the Border Patrol.
Wow. Yeah.
And I went all the way through the entire process, right? The oral board, the entire deal, right? The physical training, everything that there is, all aspects of it, all the way to the point where I was actually hired on. In fact, I have still unopened at my house my academy date to report to New Mexico to do the Border Patrol training, 6 months, right? And at the same time I was going through all of the application process with the Border Patrol, I was also getting my plan B together, which would be, hey, maybe I'll start this bakery, this donut shop, right? Didn't even have a name for it at the time, just knew that I wanted to do something different. I was done with motorcycle racing, had to get into something different. So I guess my plan B ended up being the donut bar. Plan A was the Border Patrol. And very last moments I said, I really got to think about what's my life going to look like? What's it going to be for me? If I go through with the Border Patrol, I knew I was going to have to do a 6-month commitment for training away. I was going to be away from friends and family and some of my commitments here. And I was ready to do it. I was prepared to do it. But last minute, I wouldn't say I got cold feet. I just had to make that tough career choice and decision. Now, whether that was the right decision or not, I'm not too sure. We've been at this for 5 years now, and we've been enjoying it every single day. But there's definitely the ups and downs of owning your own business, right?
Yes.
Some of the down days, as successful as Donut Bar is and continues to be, there are still some of those days where I wish, and I look at some people that have that nice and steady of say, for instance, what a career in the Border Patrol would have been, right? And I think, wow, maybe that is its own security, right? Maybe I missed the boat on that. The biggest challenge for me, though, was that date, because my age was right there at that age where this was the last chance, right? It's either you go for it or you don't. Right. So I can't say there's no regrets, but sometimes I do regret it. But that lends myself to, I guess, being able to serve just through via donations, supporting local law enforcement, supporting military, all of that sort of thing. So that's always been in my blood, but I just don't actually have to serve, right? Directly, if you will.
Exactly. And it's beautiful that you said that. We all have a unique way of serving. And you actually joined. You were ready to just change your life and commit.
Right.
But there was something that stopped you. I'm sure loved ones probably were saying, yo, Santiago, what are you doing here? You're going to leave the Border Patrol after you work hard to get in. There's like a long line of people wanting to get in, but you turned around. Did you have to silence some of the naysayers?
Oh, I did. And it was a personal decision. I'm lucky enough that a lot of people around me support anything that I do, right?
Wow.
And it was a big challenge. It was slow down. And I really had to give it a lot of thought. It didn't come lightly, right? Because I worked so hard to get up to the point to actually being accepted, and all of my dreams were focused around that, right? And to have to make the tough decision. And I felt really bad. In fact, the last oral board that they had, right? They come into the room and they tell you, listen, guys, there's a lot of people that have applied for this job. And I knew it from the first time I signed up, hundreds of people in line to get all the way to the point. They said, before you go through your last oral board, make sure this is a commitment you want to make. And I really, at that point, started feeling really guilty, because I said, man, I'm going to go through with this all the way. And then at the very last moment, I didn't. So I do feel some guilt and remorse, I guess,
Right.
for going all the way through the entire process only for the last minute to say no.
But it's a turning point, and I think that's so beautiful, because what would have been worse is you committing to something that you're not happy 100%, and there's
True.
that calling, pulling
Good
you
point.
back.
Good point. Good point. So, hindsight's 2020, they say, but we got to keep on pushing for what we want to do every day, right? So that's
Right.
kind of the way I'm living it now. I'm saying, hey, could have, would have, should have,
Yes.
but these are the decisions I've made, and I'm going to make the best of it no matter what, regardless. And that's what I'm doing every single day. Just hustle straight up.
Hustle. And let's get into the beginning of that hustle.
Sure.
You say you want to make a donut shop. You don't even know the name yet, and you're going hardcore forward. What about capital? What about design? What's going through your head at this point?
Right, just a whole bunch of craziness, right? So luckily I had a foundation from pastry, right? So I knew that part wasn't going to be my big challenge. My big challenge was going to be to create something that I knew that could appeal to the masses, right? So with my baking background, I could have done anything. I could have done wedding cakes. I could have done like a French bakery. I could have done a bread bakery. I could have done anything, right? But I said, you know what? I want to appeal to the masses. What does everybody eat? Not everybody eats cupcakes. Not everybody's going to go out and get a fancy bread or a wedding cake for dinner or whatnot. But tried and true are donuts, right?
Yes.
So it kept on pushing me towards donuts. And I had played with donuts before working in the hotels, right? It was never on the menu. Back then, donuts weren't nearly as popular as I like to think that I kind of helped make make them popular. But so I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a big fish in a small pond.
Wow.
And by that, I mean, the donuts have been around forever, right? For the ages. It dates back. I can't even tell you the correct history on it, right? Because it's so convoluted. So I'm not even going to put myself to explaining the history of donuts, but let's say for the ages. But what hasn't been done in the last 40, 50 years was a redecoration of those donuts, right? To bring that par up, to benchmark anything higher. There was no higher level to it, right?
Right.
And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm prepared to make that challenge. And let's hope that the community receives it well. And lo and behold, they did, right? So
Take me to that first
2013,
day.
so 2013, we opened, March of 2013, doors open, and there's the line. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive. But I had no idea. Remember, I went into this business not knowing the business at all, right? I knew how to bake, I knew how to create, but I didn't know the aspects of running the business per se.
You had a business plan? Not even?
Yeah, I had a business plan,
Okay.
and this was the plan, to make as many donuts as we could.
Okay,
right?
that's a good plan.
And
Plan for revenue.
that's still the same plan today, but here's the idea. Unfortunately, the first day we opened, we sold out within 40 minutes. I didn't know how many donuts to make. We made 500 donuts, and I didn't think that people were going to buy them by 24 a piece, dozens and dozens. And within 40 minutes, there was no donuts left. So that was kind of an interesting little wake up, like, wow, San Diego was really ready for Donut Bar. And I thought, I'm not going to cash in all my chips at that point, thinking, I'm made and I'm set. The next day, we increased the number by another half, right?
Yeah.
So now we're up to 750 donuts. Boom, by about 10 o'clock, we were sold out. Third day, same thing happened. So we started seeing this, and we kept on upping our production as much as we could, but not sacrificing the quality, right?
Yeah, which
so
some
that's
people
where,
do.
right, a lot of people do that. So that's where immediately almost it became this thing where our hours were from 7 a.m. until sold out, because we couldn't say we're going to be here till 2, because if we're out of product, we're out of product, right?
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. For 5 years, it's been that same thing. Sold out. So a lot of people say, well, chef, you're losing money. Why not continue to just make as many donuts as you can?
That's what I'm thinking right now. You can make a lot more money.
Of course, right? It's like, hey, if you're doing X, why not do a YZ, right? All the way through. It doesn't really work that way, and this is why. We do one masterful bake every single day. Once those donuts are done, they're gone. There's no way we can continue to make that one type of bake and continue with that quality. But a lot of it has to lend itself to our kitchen design as well, right? Mm-hmm. So you talked about capital a little bit earlier, right? Yeah. How do you fund it, this and that? Well, my first location, I bought an existing restaurant space, converted it into what would maybe work, and we're still using that same configuration, something that maybe works. Wow. So the way we got into it was really inexpensive, right? Without spending so many of these big restaurant groups now, they come in and they'll spend, it makes headlines, $2 million, $5 million to build out a store.
Oh, that upfront costs, waste of money.
That hurts really bad, right? To get into the black where you need to be to run a successful business. So even now with all of our new locations that we're doing, I'm always looking for ways to cut cost for the location, for the build out, for the materials, for the equipment that we're using. It's really important that you mind your own business, if you will. And what I mean by that is taking care of your business, right? Minding it, making sure that any kind of loans that you have against equipment or lease obligations you have, tenant improvements that you have to pay back to your landlord or obligations through your lease. You have to mind your business these days, right? You gotta watch every single dollar. It's funny because it's so easy to get hooked on the fact of, wow, look at our numbers this month. Look how much we brought in. But you can't forget this part. There's always expenses. No matter how much that top line looks, there's still a bottom line, and that bottom line is constantly chasing that top line, right? So no matter how successful it might look on the outside, you got to really look deep inside and say, wow, where is all the money at? And a lot of it gets eaten up in expenses.
Man, so if you're creating a business, you got an idea, you got to watch that revenue, but more so your expenses. Because I believe that's one of the top 5 reasons why a small business fails. They're not aware of those expenses and they pile up.
Right.
Fortunately for you, you create this beautiful opening day donut bar. You got a line, you sell out. Now we're in a position where these are popping up everywhere. Could you explain how that happened?
Sure. So I built the business to expand it, right? I knew that I wanted to someday not become well, there's 2 ways I looked at it, right? In the very beginning, I said we can either do a destination or we can do a saturation. Meaning I could put 5 of them in downtown San Diego and we just saturate San Diego corners like a Starbucks kind of deal, right? Where if you need a coffee, you're going to go to a Starbucks because it's easy, it's convenient, it's on every corner location. Or we can become a destination. Well, right from the get-go, right out the gate, we became a destination by that line forming. So my whole plan of becoming saturation, just by natural selection, put us into a destination. So I said, let's just become destination oriented. Let's go to destination cities, like our expansion now. We're in Temecula, a destination. We're in Scottsdale, a destination. We're in Las Vegas, a destination. So that's kind of the way we built up the brand now, is just to be destination oriented. And I said, well, I could do it all on my own, meaning I could fund them, I could build them, I can manage them, I could run them. Or alternatively, I could franchise them. There's pros and cons to both, but the big pro that stuck out to me to franchising these other locations was I was going to get a mom and a pop that would own and operate their location and give it that true energy and love and passion that it takes to recreate that vibe that we have at Donut Bar. Right. And it comes from small things, from bending at the hips and picking up a straw wrapper off the floor. If it's just managed by somebody that doesn't have a vested interest in that brand, you're probably not going to get that, no matter how much you're paying your general manager or a managing partner, if you will. You have to have people that have a vested interest in the brand. And that way we knew from that point that these locations will be successful. So that's kind of the way we went into expansion, is through franchise.
And they have, I'm sure. I mean, I've seen it on your website. I think there was an open window to take advantage of one of these opportunities, and I'm sure people signed up at the masses.
It was crazy. The first 6 months, we had over 3,000 applicants to apply. Now, not all of those applicants were qualified, as you can imagine, right? A lot of people live the dream, and I love that. You got to live the dream, right? You got to knock on the doors, and I always call it tapping on the glass, right? There's all kinds of people, and I'm in a donut aquarium, if you will, and people are just tapping on the glass, saying if I jump and which way I move, right? And that's fun. I enjoy it. That means we've created a lot of excitement, and we've done something that made people want to become a part of it. And that's kind of fun whenever people want to play on your team, right? It's like go back to school and everybody wants to be on your team, right? You're the team captain and everybody's like, giving their big chest out for, I want to be on his team, I want to be on his team.
But can they play?
But can they play, right? Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people can, but we're still very, very selective through all of our choices, who we picked, right? And it doesn't just come down to the money. A lot of people have money these days, right? Mm-hmm. There's access to capital. That makes life a lot easier for entrepreneurs. Just you got to understand how to access that capital. Right. And what excites a lot of people about our brand is, let's say, for instance, you're entrepreneurial and you don't have that seed money. It's easy to reach out to your network for seed money if you're chasing after a brand like Donut Bar, because any kind of investor is going to look at that and say, hey, wait a minute, this place is #1 bakery on TripAdvisor in San Diego, Forbes magazine, the gold standard, all the awards and accolades we have makes it really enticing for an investor to come in to even seed entrepreneurial types. So we had to, man, I'm telling you, that was one of the hardest decisions we did, is looking through, thousands of applicants, literally, and understanding who and what these people were, and then meeting with them face to face and having long conversations. And as you can see already, I'm pretty long-winded, right?
Yeah, no.
So, so some of our applicants had to sit with me for, upwards of 6-7 hours just meeting with me alone before we kind of went through that whole approval process.
You're very selective. Everything from I'm hearing the way you choose your candidates. I mean, it's as if you're limiting this opportunity to everyone, but you're actually increasing the quality of everything, right? You want to make sure the right candidate takes over. And so let's get into the quality of the actual donuts. They're not like your standard donuts. Can you break it down how the size, design, the just the beauty of this? How did you come up with it?
I appreciate that. So the donuts themselves, right? I said whenever I started Donut Bar, I wanted to have a product that looked unique and very identifiable, right? You have to, for instance, you see, McDonald's Quarter Pounder or their Big Mac, or you see Carl's Jr. Western Bacon Cheeseburger. You don't confuse the two. You immediately know where that came from.
Right, a McRib or whatever.
Right, you know, you don't have to see the logo, the golden arches, the star. You know exactly where that product came from, right? And that's really a big challenge to do with food, because food can be just, so blasé. Everybody has it, right? So I knew that I wanted to set myself apart and have a creative look to my donuts. And I've done that. I mean, you can scroll through Instagram feeds, and I spend hours a day on Instagram and social media, and I can find my donuts instantaneously, right? But the way we got to there was kind of deliberate, but at the same time, it became by the way that we make our dough that made our donuts so big. Right? So there's been a lot of people that have tried to, that's one of the big things about our donuts is it's sizable. You open up a box of donuts and, you see our yeast donut and they're, over 6 inches around and, 2.5 to 3 inches tall. And the reason for that isn't just the size of the cutter. It's the way that we have our dough rise, right? The way we manipulate our dough. We are not gentle on our dough. My bakers know, being trained, that they have to beat their dough to a pulp almost. And what's happening is it's making a little bit of science happen in there with our yeast. It's the way that we're getting the fibers to stretch in our yeast and our dough, and it makes this dough rise much bigger than an average donut. So a lot of people have come in and they'll try to recreate a Donut Bar donut, and they look at the size of the cutter we're using and they think that must be the trick. Well, they end up with this little thing that looks like a bagel. That's not the trick, right? So there's tricks to the trade, but we make certain that our dough rises really big, it gets really tall. And we don't stop just with that. Now we're talking about the type of ingredients that we're using, right?
You're giving a secret here.
That's okay. You can try and replicate it. You're not going to be able to.
I heard there have been people
they try,
down south of the border or wherever.
Yeah, that's true. They try to. There's and they always say, what's that saying? Whenever you copy somebody, it's the biggest form of flattery, or what you call it. So, and that's fine. I'm glad to be an inspiration, let's say, right?
Nice.
And I'm not going to spend my energy and time chasing after the copycats. People will know whenever they're in an original, right?
Right.
And I get that, because I'll get somebody calling and saying, this isn't right, or tell me it's not, please, because they're not seeing that same quality, right? Whenever they go to another place that has tried to mimic our donuts. But then we get down to the types of ingredients we're using, right? And most of the copycats, I'll say, what a lot of people do is they go the easy route. There is no easy road with anything, right?
Yes.
You think that you can copy something and do the easy way and just take some photos and recreate it to look like, and that's not the case, right? So, for instance, in the donut business, one of the dirty, dark secrets of the donut business and baking in general is that there are mass-produced alternatives that you can use. For instance, you can buy chocolate glaze by the bucket load. And whenever you do that, you're not getting good quality. Instead, what we do is we make all of our glaze in-house from scratch, right? So we're ordering the base chocolate and we're mixing it and we're making and tempering our own chocolate for our glaze. We are, whenever we order chocolate curls, we're ordering Belgian chocolate curls, the real deal.
Making me hungry.
Yeah, I hear you. Whenever we order our bacon, we're not using pre-cooked bacon that comes in a big bag that we just chop up. We're using center cut, real deal bacon. We're candying it ourselves in-house. So remember, I tell you, the more we sell, the more those expenses come up. Right. But here's the thing. Once it becomes so popular like Donut Bar, it would have been easy for us to just become a tourist trap and just say, oh, we want them to line up and let's give them less than standard dough nuts, right, if you will. That's not what we do. I always said we'll never become a tourist trap. We'll always be quality first. over quantity, even though our quantities sometimes soar up to 7,000 pieces in a day. That's amazing, right? Yes. But we're never going to sacrifice with the quality. And that's what keeps us with all those #1 spots, year after year, winning all of the awards. Right. And I know it's hard for some of these companies to award us every year because they want new. That's the way the world works. They always want new. Yeah. But time and time again, 5 years running, we keep winning those same awards, #1 spots. So, and that comes through just, being consistent with that quality.
You ever feel threatened by those other big conglomerates like your Krispy Kremes or anybody?
I love it, actually. For April Fool's last year, we all donned Krispy Kreme's hats for April Fool's, and we did a little Instagram post saying, we're bought out by Krispy Kreme's, and it was kind of funny. Krispy Kreme actually said, we would have loved that donut bar, so that was kind of fun.
Oh, they were messing with you,
man. Oh, yeah, so it was good, so we have a good time with it. But no, we're not afraid of that. We're not on that same mass level that Krispy Kreme is. We still get to be kind of, like I say, destination oriented. Right. I don't want them to be on every single corner, and I never plan on Donut Bar being on every single corner. We're going to keep it where we're just in key cities, key markets, key demographics, and just rock and roll that way.
And everything is so strategic. I mean, we went from the quality to the ingredients to the presentation. And San Diego, a big military town, I heard you did something unique with the Navy with some of your donuts. How did that work?
Right. So we do a lot of things with the Navy, actually. Here's one of our hardest challenges is getting on base, right? So we get a lot of special orders for the Navy, always anyway. And a lot of times we're having to meet people at the gate, Coronado, right there on the gate, when people are running out, sometimes freezing cold in the morning, get their donuts. But most recently I did something which we crossed international waters, if you will. We got to take donuts on board to the Royal Canadian Navy.
Oh, how cool.
That was really cool. And in fact, I got invited onto the ship, and I got to tour the entire ship with the captain and even into the captain's quarters and everything. So that was pretty cool. So whenever they sail down, which is quite often, actually, they port here in San Diego, they invite me on. And I've never been to Canada, but once I step on ship, they say that I'm now in Canada. So that's kind of neat. And, they have all their ceremonies that they do. For instance, I got presented one of their little gold coins, right?
Oh, yeah, challenge coin.
Yeah, the challenge coin, and captain has a certain way that he gives it to you and all that, and I was blown away by it. And then, in fact, they poured it in Long Beach a few months later, and he invited me up to it was Fleet Week, right?
Oh, yes.
So he invited me up to their big gala they had on the ship, and it was really neat to be around everybody, right? And there was so many other admirals and captains or whatever you call them. I'm sorry, I don't know the terminology for them all, but from other San Diego-based ships that were on his ship that night for their meet and greet. So it was really neat. So and so many of them knew, oh, you're San Diego and you're up here, chef. How are you? So it's kind of amazing to see how we've gotten interwoven and entwined with the military. But I guess that just happens being in San Diego naturally.
Right. They love your donuts. Now that you're gonna have a camo donut probably coming out.
There you go.
But, a lot of people, we were at WeWork right across the street from the donut bar.
Sure.
And everybody that passes by, they're always like, oh, man, you ever been to donut bar? I love them, And they're like, man, they're making a lot of money.
Right.
And, that's the second thing they say, because you're selling so much.
Right.
And I always I wish I could pull you away and be like, here, ask and answer any questions they have about entrepreneurship.
Sure.
Would you have any top 3 advice to someone starting a business? What would you tell them?
Yeah. First off, there's going to be the naysayers, right?
Yes.
They're everywhere. It's going to be from your aunt to your grandma to your mother-in-law to your wife to your husband to whomever. There's going to be naysayers always, and you just got to ignore them. You have to take advice when you think that advice is applicable, but at the same time, never let anybody else crush on your dreams, right? You got to stay with your dreams. Sincerely, and you hear it all over the place, right? We're not the first person to sit here in front of a camera and talk about not giving up on your dreams and not let naysayers get in your way, but that's the truth. They're going to, and you just got to keep pushing through. But here's the thing. You get into it 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, maybe even 5 years, who knows? The perseverance is what's going to count at that point. You have to keep on pushing, because in the back of your mind, all of those naysayers, they still have a voice. They're going to be back there clicking, saying, oh, he shouldn't have done that. I'll tell you, somebody close in my family, whenever I said I'm opening up a donut shop, literally it was an audible laugh. And they were sincere about it. They were laughing like, oh, unbelievable, you're going to do a donut shop. And it wasn't like a fun laughter. It was like, that's ridiculous to even think of. And I tell you, some of the down days, because they're not all up days, right? Business is tough. And you think, maybe they were right. But you know what? You got to just keep on pushing, keep striving. And so that's my biggest thing is there's going to be a lot of stuff that gets you down in business, right? As high as the highs are, the lows are right there to match them, right? So you got to have that balance, and you got to just remember what the dream is and what your belief is. The other thing is you have to have your exit strategy, right? So you can only build a business with an exit strategy. If you're not building your business every single day to have an exit strategy, you're just working as an entrepreneur, business owner, and you're never going to get out of it. Now, I'm not saying that the point of my business is to get out of it, but I know that if I'm building it to always have an exit strategy, I know that I'm making a profitable business, right? So, long term, for instance, sure, I reward myself and I have fancy cars. I have Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Porsches and all this, right? Man, I have all the toys, right? I have the toys, but at the same time, I have not put the business in a position where that's a necessity, right? That's there's a sacrifice, right? Like I don't take vacations. I would love to, you see all the Instagrammers and they're all over the world. And sometimes I think, wow, that would be fun. But instead I'm spending my personal money on cars. Well, that's what's important to me, right? Yes. So maybe for you it is vacationing, but I know this. My business, as much as I love it, it cannot, I shouldn't say that. It could survive without me being there on a day-to-day, but I won't let it be there without me on a day-to-day. So alternative to a vacation where I'm gone for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even a week, my vacation is driving my car back and forth. So you have to reward yourself all the time, right? Otherwise, what's the point of working so hard? You get burnt. So I've said to myself, my reward is going to be my cars and my toys. And instead of a vacation, whenever I see my good friends out on the Maldives or something, I'm like, but I'm driving my Ferrari today, so it's okay.
And it's advertising your business.
And it markets, right? Yeah. So it's a win-win. So you just got to find out what's important to you. Right. But with the business, you just have to stay tried and true and not let people get you down. You have to keep on pushing every single day. And Instagram makes it really hard because you see all these successful people, right? Yeah. And you just, I wonder what their life is, and the average is 75% of people live paycheck to paycheck. And they look and they see, oh, look at the donut guy in his Ferrari. I bet he's not paycheck to paycheck. Fortunately, I'm not, but I know what it's like to be there. And I know what it's like to make certain that I'm not going to be back there. And that's where it just comes to perseverance, right? Every single day, pushing. So I'm not there. And I can tell you, this is a little side note for you. While I was going through the Border Patrol Academy, and I knew I had just a certain amount of money set aside to open up a business, not a lot. It came to the point where I was actually walking to the grocery store with my 2 sons, kicking rocks, literally, not by choice. And what I mean by that is no car. Yeah. And that was just a few months before I actually opened up Donut Bar. Now I knew I could have spent that money to buy a car, right? I could have, absolutely. But I knew I needed to have that little nest egg to start the business. Wow. So you can literally do it from nothing, but you have to make those sacrifices. Right. And now I've been rewarded. Now I went from no car to as many cars as I want, right? So that's kind of cool. Not as many, but I can have a couple cars. But whenever I opened up Donut Bar, there's pictures, and I finally did have to buy transportation to run a business, and I bought a $1,400 Jeep Wrangler with no heat and no top. And it was cold some mornings. And I put a blanket over me, and I'm driving my stick shift Jeep thinking, please don't let me get pulled over. There's no insurance on this thing. Wow.
So you came from that Jeep to now this future that you built. Before we go, do you see a future with your family taking over this? And you mentioned you have 2 boys.
Yeah. I'm not too sure yet. They one's graduated already just from high school, and my other's about to graduate from high school this year. And I'm not going to pressure them into doing it. I want them to create their own. And that's something that I've learned. I don't want my sons, and they're not. They're taken care of, but they're not spoiled, right? If they want something, they have to earn it. They have to work for it. My son, he has to work in the business whenever he wants to go to a concert. Hey, I need help this weekend. Come down and work. And he works. So I'm not spoiling them that way. I never want them to think. I want them to have security because that's as being a parent what we want to provide to our kids. But at the same time, I don't want them to think that I don't have to do anything because my dad's got me. That's not true. I pay for the insurance on their cars and their phone bills.
That's it.
That's it
for the rest.
They work. Exactly.
That's a beautiful story. And to get back to your family, I'm sure they're going to be thankful by the disciplines and the knowledge. And I hope you watching today is you learned a lot from Chef Santiago. And please check him out. He's here in downtown San Diego, a destination spot. And join us next time. And thank you so much, Chef, for being on the show.
Thanks, Chris. You bet.